So welcome everybody. Welcome Ellie. I saw you yesterday actually. So we're going to talk about trailer loading and also traveling, getting your horse to travel quietly in the horse box. A lot of people have problems with trailer loading. It mainly stems from a lack of groundwork when we're struggling to load a horse. We often don't have the connection that we would like to have, and the trust and relationship that we'd like to have. So a lot of the preparation for trailer loading is done before we even get to the trailer. So being able to do your groundwork, your basic groundwork patterns, and building a connection with your horse is really vital before we even start to load our horse. So being able to send our horse around us, left and right, backwards and forwards, being able to hind quarter yield, and to get these groundwork practices into place so your horse has learned it and practice it. And once it's got it, you'll find that a lot of the trailer loading issues will start to dissipate. I'm not saying they'll go away, but if you've had a horse that's already got a trailer loading problem, often it takes quite a while to turn that around. I work with a load of people already who are struggling to get their horses onto the box or even onto the ramp. So I've made the mistake a couple of times of being called out to help people with loading problems, and the expectation often is that we can get the horse on and get it loaded, and in one session everything's fine. And often that's not the case. Firstly, people who often call me are having problems with loading already, so they've already tried to load the horse. They've probably got the lunge line out, they've probably got the flags out, they've probably got all sorts of different things out to try and get the horse in the box, but nothing seems to work. One of the biggest mistakes that we make is trying to pull the horse into the box and then try to trap it from behind. So those sorts of scenarios, if you've been down that road already, it's really takes time to turn the horse around and to build that trust and that leadership where the horse is feeling confident for you to send it into the box. So sending, drawing, hind quarter yielding, depending on type of box or trailer you've got. Sometimes it's a straight load, sometimes it's a straight load with a hind quarter yield into herringbone or flat position. So all those little steps, if you like, there's preparation needed before you even get to the box. And I can't iterate enough that this is where it's all at. I've also seen people loading horses with chiffney chains, all sorts of gadgets, twitching, all sorts of different ways of trying to subdue the horse into the box. But at the end of the day, if he makes up his mind he's not going to go in, then he's not going to go in. And it's a really big ask for any horse to go into a confined space, because horses are naturally claustrophobic, and often walking into a box or a trailer, you might find it's a little it's a little darker inside the trailer than it is outside, depending on if it's night or day. But often just that transition from walking outside into something that's feeling trapped, the horse feels trapped inside a horse box. So being able to get it to relax as part of your groundwork training program is, firstly, can my horse stand still in any environment, whether there's grass, on concrete, in the school, around the stable yard. So one of the first things that I teach my horses how to stand still, and it's a vital skill to have. And a lot of people can't get their horse to stand still without a pacifier, for example, putting a hay net down or a hay net up for the horse to stand still. And there's a lot of instances that I come across where the first thing that we have to teach a horse is how to stand still, and it's a big issue that I'm finding out there is getting people to understand that getting their horse to stand still. I said to someone the other day, she said to me, how long would I expect my horse to stand still for? My answer was, if I was traveling from A to B, half an hour, 2 hours, I'd be looking for my horse to stand still for up to half an hour, just to be able to stand still in any position, in any environment. Because if I don't have that before I get in the box, I'm going to struggle when I get in the box for them to relax and be able to stand still and hold themselves together. So it's quite a lengthy process to go through. But if you know what you're doing and you know how to get the horse to relax and to release before you get to the box, then you can get it in and find that relaxation. So before you start to close the horse into the box, is be able to get it onto the ramp, for example. And it's just a step-by-step process. But going back to your groundwork, and also part of that would be your desensitizing the horse, getting the horse used to being in confined spaces, using whatever you may have available. Often I will put up barriers on either side, get the horse to squeeze through tighter spaces with a wide space first and then into tighter spaces. I'll teach my horse to back up into that space so they can walk into that space, back up out of that space. So all that preparation for that actual day when I put them on the box, all those steps are in place. But more importantly, the horse can relax, release, and be able to cope with its emotions in the box. So often using the relaxation techniques I use, that helps a lot. Some of you are familiar with that, some of you aren't. But just be able to get the horse to relax, disengage, and to settle in any environment outside of the box. If I can't do that, then I'm definitely going to be struggling when I get into the box. So making sure that that's in place is paramount. To say hello to Laurie, allow her to talk, and Catherine. Welcome, Catherine. So along the way, if you do have any questions, please feel free to butt in and ask me any questions along the way. Okay, so one of the struggles that I've seen that often people aren't aware of is loading their horse on concrete, especially horses that are shod. What I've seen in the past is the horses slipping, especially when they start to get when fear starts to kick in. Maybe when you're trying to get your horse in the box and you're on concrete, I see the horses starting to slip. And as soon as you start to force a horse and it's starting to slip on the ground that you're working on, you're going to double your troubles, basically, in terms of getting a horse into the box if it's slipping around on concrete. Often at the end of the show, that's when people suffer the most. I've been to a couple of shows recently, and that's when things get really people get in trouble then, because they got to get home. It's getting dark and everybody's offering to help, and often people are coming up with all sorts of different ideas, and often it escalates and the horse won't go in. I had an issue a couple of weeks ago. Lady called me up and was trying to load on concrete, and the horse was getting Amanda, welcome Amanda, was getting worked up and was trying to slip on the concrete. And so we made a small change. We just drove onto a graveled area and worked with the horse there, and it very quickly went onto the box using the techniques I use. But we still got work to do in terms of getting the horse relaxed, because often what we do is we'll get the horse into the box and we'll just close it up and go. Let's close up quickly and let's get going. We don't give the horse enough time to learn how to relax in the box. So often I'll put them into the box, I'll bring them out of the box, I'll back them out depending on if it's a trailer or a box, bring them in and out without closing them in. So I spend a lot of time just getting the horse to relax in the box before I close it in the box. So can it hold itself together? Can I either back it out, bring it through, or out the front door of a trailer, for example? So a lot of time is just spent relaxing in the box, getting it to stand still. One of the things that you can also do once you get the horse standing still in the box is to start to move the box from left to right. So I'll stand in the box or the truck and just sway the truck, and so get it used to that movement. So all these little steps that I take along the way, just to gauge how the horse is feeling about each step along the way. So if it's not feeling relaxed and confident with the first step onto the ramp, for example, if I can't get it to relax there, that will be my first priority, is get that relaxation. So slowly work the horse towards the box. So if you're in a situation where you're struggling and you haven't excuse me, you haven't had the time to put your groundwork training into place, you're often going to struggle with putting them in the box. So going back to my groundwork is always my go-to. So if I'm struggling to get the horse on the box, for example, I would move away from the box, send my horse around me, do some groundwork, just get the horse moving its feet. So the idea is that it moves its feet away from the box and it gets to relax by the box or in the box. So a slow process of slowly asking the horse to come up to the ramp, for example, put its nose on the ramp, and that's your first step, putting your nose onto the ramp and relaxing. And this could take 5, 10, 20, an hour. Who knows how long it's going to take? But like I keep going back to, my groundwork would be in place so I can successfully send the horse around me, left, right, hind quarter yield, and then start to ask the horse to come up to the box. What we often do is one of the mistakes we make when we're asking the horse to come up to the ramp is we're in front of the horse, in front of its head instead of behind its shoulder. So this is where your groundwork comes in, where you can start to send your horse to the box and eventually just point it in that direction and it'll walk on. But repetition of that and relaxation is really important. Excuse me, I'm going to catch my breath here. Talking too fast, I think. Have we got any questions? Anybody struggling with boxing at the moment?
I've got a question. I don't know if you can actually hear me, can you?
Nelly, how are you?
Oh, you can. I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
So with Aero, he goes straight like on the box and he stands in there.
Yep.
But as soon as we start moving, obviously I can't really see what he's doing, but he starts like, I'd explain it as freaking out.
Okay.
He like moves around a lot and jumps around a lot, but then it's like he's trying to find his feet.
Yep.
And then once he's actually going, he's then fine. But that initial first kind of 2 minutes of moving, he sort of does his like this little dance thing. I don't really know why he does it.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One of the things that I would be doing before I moved him, before I moved the box anyway, was often when they get in the box, they're not standing with their feet spread apart. And often people don't take that into consideration. So they might be standing sort of with their feet apart or together or behind each other, and they're often not balanced in there. So before I actually start to travel them, I'll put my partition for example, or my back on if it's a trailer, and then I'll just gently hold the horse on the wither and just rock them back and forward. So just a little rock back and forward, and often you'll find that they'll step out and open up and spread their legs.
Okay.
Yeah, so often it's just they're not standing with their legs spread, so they have to compensate. And then once you're moving, then it becomes really, it can become quite scary for them because now they're moving and they're trying to find their balance.
Okay.
Yeah, just a little something that.
Because obviously where I use Tanya's trailer, she doesn't have the partitions in there. So I have wondered whether maybe a partition would be better for him so he can kind of lean on it a bit more, because he sort of moves himself side to side and then he'll stand with his bum in like the left corner.
Right, yeah.
So I just wonder whether maybe a partition would probably be better for him.
It's debatable. Often they're taking the partition out. It depends on the width of the partitions, obviously, making sure that your horse is not completely trapped in your partition. So there's a little bit of room so that the horse can move left and right and spread its legs out. Sometimes it's a little too tight. So sometimes taking out the partition will actually get the horse to stand better because he can actually spread his legs. So making sure that you've got the right gap for your horse, the right width where the horse goes in is quite important. And I do the same thing, just gently on the wither, just rock the horse backwards and forwards and see how they split their legs and how far apart their legs are in that space. So
okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because what you don't want is the horse. Don't want to put the horse in too tight in the between the two parameters, where it's actually leaning on the box and leaning on the partition. There would be a certain amount of support there, but you want to have a little bit of gap so that they can spread and balance themselves out, so they can use their legs. I've seen the horses that have been put into a really tight partition, and actually were leaning on the box. Unfortunately, they'd also weed in the box, but leaned on the side of the panel and just slipped and went down. So it's a little too tight on the parameters.
Yeah.
So
okay, that makes sense.
yeah, so just something to think about. And often, if they're struggling to balance, taking the partition out which will help them. Obviously, you want to tie them correctly up the front of the box, so they can't turn and twist in the box. Obviously,
Yeah.
I see some people cross tie. I just have make sure I've got a nice tie up the front of the box so that the horse.
Yeah. See, Tanya's is cross tie, so maybe he'd be better with being tied from the front, so he can't kind of swing side to side.
Yeah, you want to be able to move his head obviously to a little bit, but you don't want to be able to turn and get himself in trouble. So
yeah, because when I followed the trailer, he kept looking round at me in the from the trailer. So I think maybe he'd probably be better tied from the front then.
Absolutely. So like I say, you want him to be able to move his nose around a little bit to the left and right, and to get to his hay if you've got hay in there, but not twist his head around, because if he twists his head around and you go around the corner, he's likely to drop that shoulder and he could fall over. So making sure you can't twist too far around is really important.
That makes sense.
Yeah, we'll give that. We got to do some boxing with him soon, don't we?
Yes, with the lorry. Yes, because
Yeah.
he goes in the trailer, but obviously I'm going to be using the lorry. So, yeah, I do want to do. So he has been in it. He's walked up the ramp. Obviously, it was the turning that he couldn't work out, because it's got tap lockers in the back.
Right.
I think he just couldn't work out how to turn.
Yes.
So he panicked a little bit. He didn't try and run out of it or anything, but he just got a little bit worried on his feet, because he was too busy putting his head in the feed bucket and wasn't actually looking where he was going.
I wasn't concentrating. Yeah,
he wasn't, because as per usual.
Yeah. Yep. Concentration span of a neck.
Yes.
So also the setting into the truck now is getting them confident with coming in, and then obviously coming in and then be able to hind quarter yield and set them up in the box, whichever way it is. So being able to, with our groundwork, making sure that we can do that on the ground. So putting him into a situation, you can put down poles or you can put down raised poles and send him into that situation. We did a little bit with that not so long ago, Ellie, and sending him into an area and getting him to hind quarter yield into a space.
Yeah.
So practicing that, because a lot of people have problem when they get the horse in, they turn it, and it just bolts straight out, especially when you're starting. So just getting him just a step-by-step relaxation along the way. So getting them straight in, and then asking for that hind quarter yield. And that's often where people will have a problem, because then they'll come around and they'll want to shoot straight out the box. So what I do is to get the hind quarter yield in, and then I'll let them come around and just stick their head out the box and see if I can get them to stand there first, so that they can. There's a space timing between turning and actually coming out, so you can look out the box, but you can relax, and then eventually I can send them back into the box. So I can bring them back out, back in, straight in, hind quarter yield, let them come out, put the head out, and just relax a bit. So just dropping the head down and getting them to relax. So I spend a lot of time just doing that, especially if they're not feeling relaxed, they're not feeling confident. So a lot of time doing that. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Pleasure. Anybody else struggling out there? Susan, how are you getting on with your boy? No. Okay, so the step-by-step process that we use for boxing, obviously groundwork is important first, and then getting them into the box and out of the box, and also being able to travel. So once I've got them into the box and I've got them comfortable with going in and out the box, I won't close the partitions to start with, but eventually I'll start to slowly start to close the partition. It helps to have someone to help you, just to bring the door across to you. Also teaching them how to tie up in the box. Obviously, I've done my groundwork training and I've got my horse able to tie up and understands how to pressure and release on the rope. And then setting my horse up once I get them into the box. So if you're doing a side load, if you're coming in straight and asking for a hindquarter yield around into the box, once I've got the horse settled doing that, coming in and out and relaxed, then I'll start to use my training rope and I'll put it through. If I've got a ringer, or I don't use baling twine because that can get knotted up when you're trying to slide through, but just put it through a ring. If you've got a ring, put your rope through the ring and you can start to manage the head. So if you get in trouble, you can also let go, but you can start to manage the head and bring the head into the front of the box and then push the hind quarter around. So you've got your head here, you can bend and flex and bring them round, and you can manage the rope so you can start to ask them to wait a little longer in the box and release. I don't know if that makes sense. It's hard to explain to you without actually being inside the box. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, so once we've got that process working, we can manage the horse and tie it up in the box. I won't be tying them up to start with, so I'll just put my rope through. If I've got a nice steel ring in my box, put that through so I can manage. And then I'll slowly start to close my door. What I often do is just put a rope on the door, and I'll start to bring my door in and out, and slowly just start to close the door and open. If you've got someone to help you, often it's not practical to do it yourself, but just slowly bring the partition in. If it comes in from the side, just halfway, and then put it out again. It just gauge my horse's response to slowly being into that confined space, and eventually I can bring it up and close my partition. Get the horse used to that. So once I have them in the partition, then that's when I'll start to stand sideways on the box and see if I can move the box with my feet or the trailer. Just get it used to the movement, so they get used to that first before I actually go off. So I spend quite a bit of time with that, making sure the horse is balanced. If I need to, just on the wither and just rock the horse backwards and forwards, get them to spread their legs out, and just see if I can rock the box gently. And once they feel confident with that, then I'll start up the engine on the truck or the vehicle that's towing, so they get used to that noise. Sometimes when you start up, there's a bit of a worry about that noise. So getting them used to that step-by-step process. Always, obviously, making sure that you're safe, and always checking on the horse's threshold, that you're not going too far over the threshold. So I recently did a boxing session with a school horse that a couple had bought, and we did 4 sessions. We did our groundwork first. They practiced their groundwork, and we did 4 sessions with him. He'd never been in a box before, never been out of the school, which was actually probably a blessing in disguise, actually, because he's never been in a situation where he was forced into a box. And that can become a huge problem, where if you have forced him into a box at some point in time, or they have been forced into a box, that's gonna make it more difficult for you to get to that point. But once they're happy with the truck moving and the swaying from side to side, I also might take and just tap my finger around the box, or just start to kick around the box and make some noise, get them used to the noise. Because I don't know if you've been in a trailer, for example, when it's traveling, a lot of them are hell of a noisy, make a lot of noise. I think the newer ones are better, but some of them make a lot of noise. So that's getting them used to that. And then also, if you're going through trees or you're scraping on branches and that sort of thing, those sorts of noises, get them used to that sort of thing. So if you can simulate those sorts of things that are going to happen along the way, and prepare the horse better for when you actually set off. So all that preparation takes as long as it takes, and it's all about preparation and closing up. Anyone got any questions? Oh, very quiet tonight. Anybody having problems with loading at the moment? Anything specific? No? That's good. I'm glad you're all on here then. Okay, so another thing that I've noticed when coming home from the shows, normally where people struggle, and I think one of the reasons that we struggle at the end of the show, because we've been busy with our horse all day, and often we park on, I see people, a lot of people, especially during the summer, are parking on grass. And so often the horses have had a busy day, they're hungry, and we parked on grass, and we try to get them off the grass into the horse box, and those little things like that can cause the horse to say, no, I'm not getting on the box. So making sure that you've fed your horse, make sure it's had water and it's been fed before I leave the show, so that I'm not being pulled towards the grass, or the horse is thinking about eating, and bringing it forward. In terms of putting hay in the horse box, everybody does it. I do it too. Depending on the horse, I may reward with I may treat reward on the box too if I'm really struggling. But I don't use treats a lot, but I'll definitely put good hay in for the horse, so when they get in, they got a good munch to have on the box. And you can put them on the box when you're training, and just put them on the box. You can feed them on the box or the trailer. You can put their hay in the trailer. So the more time you spend around the trailer or the box, the better. I'll often put the trailer out when I'm teaching the horse to load, out in the arena. So I've got a good surface to work on. So if I'm struggling and the horse does decide to rear up or take off around me or whatever, I'm in a safe environment. It's not practical for everybody, but if it's possible to work in a school, so drive your truck into the school and work with it there, far safer place to work. And obviously, if the horse gets away from you or whatever, it's not going to run down the road. But so those are the sorts of things that you can work on. The other thing is, if you're struggling with your ramp and putting the horse onto the ramp, is maybe putting some barriers up on the side of the ramp, especially if you're struggling, if you haven't done groundwork or you haven't done your training. So you can't, if it's possible and you have them, you can put a couple of barriers down the side of the ramp, just to help that they don't step off the ramp to start with. And often when they step up to the horse box, you'll find that the first thing they do is put their nose on it. And if there's been other horses in there, they put down and they'll start to smell and to interact with the smells on the ramp. So just allowing them time to do that. The other thing that happens quite a lot is the horse will come up to the ramp and start to paw the ramp with its hoof. And this is, I think there's a couple of things. Mainly the reason for that is just to check if the surface is safe. They'll often do it when they come up to a puddle or to water or to a surface that they're not familiar with or not sure how strong it is. So often they'll start to paw the box just to check the strength of the box. So because they don't know when they step off one surface to another surface. If you think from a horse's perspective, he doesn't know whether that's safe, whether it's strong enough to take him. So sometimes they'll check it out. Other times they might get stressed and start to do that. So there's two sides to this. One, it could be stress. Two, it could be they're just checking out the environment, making sure that it's strong enough for them to step on. Phew, I'm talking up a storm here.
I've got another tip that you might be relevant, Wayne.
Yep.
And that is, depending on the build of the horse box, you may have to stand on the right-hand side of the horse to drive it up into the box.
Yes.
So you need to make sure your horse is comfortable off both sides, particularly working off the right-hand side on your groundwork. Otherwise, if you have to drive it from the left, you end up getting squished yourself between the horse and the side of the box.
Absolutely. Yeah. So depending on which if it's loading backwards or forwards or straight forward is being able to set yourself on either side and be able to send them forward now. So spending your practicing that and being able to actually be able to do it and send them through things, really important. Good point, Nick. Any other questions?
What are the challenges you've had?
Okay, so yeah, some of the challenges that I've had with boxing. One is not to if someone calls and wants a emergency loading. Often these days, I won't take those sorts of calls because they've probably spent the last 3 or 4 hours trying to load the horse, and I do help people with this, but I've kind of learned my lesson when it comes to these sorts of situations. Is people expecting you to get the horse on the box, but they spent the last 3 or 4 hours with all sorts of different contraptions, ideas to try and get the horse on, and by the time you get there, the horse is really stressed. So if you do need help, try not to get too many people involved. If you're stuck at a show or something like that, try to keep it calm, keep it quiet, and just keep it to yourself, really. I see a lot of people get into trouble like that. So yeah, just calm and easy. Make sure your groundwork works properly. Putting a tarpaulin down, putting a tarpaulin with a squeeze. So when I say a squeeze, I'm a tighter space so I can get them in. Making sure I can back up. I can back up straight. I can also back into an L shape. And all these things come from the groundwork training. So that's where it's at, was in the groundwork. I'm just trying to think of any other challenges that I've had. I've faced many challenges when it comes to loading, and the biggest thing that I've learned is to be patient and to offer the horse the opportunity to make the decision that we're looking for, because sometimes it might not be the right decision for them at the time, but just slowly presenting the obstacle, whatever it may be a horse box, it may be something else that you want to send them through or over, is taking the time to allow the horse to make a decision to move forward into that situation. So often we don't have the patience, or we don't give the horse enough time to actually make a decision to move forward. So I might put the front feet on the ramp, for example, and I might spend the next 20 minutes there, depending on how the horse feels, and then maybe back it up and then bring it forward and maybe get another step forward into the box. But every step of the way is patience, and then slowly asking for a little bit more. So kind of like opening the door, and they will make a decision when they're ready to come forward. You just providing the opportunity, and making sure that you've got a really good connection with your horse. So at the end of the day, if the connection and the relationship is strong, you can send them through anything or into anything within reason, and the horse will have that trust element with you, that it will follow you anywhere, or you can send it in anywhere. So patience is the key. I've spent, I think that's probably the longest amount of time I spent with trying to box a horse for some years, probably 3 to 4 hours, I think, in a situation where the horse had to move, and just taking the time to step back and just to do it slowly. Backing up can often help too, is stepping the horse onto the ramp, for example, getting it to relax, and then also backing up. So just backing it out of the box, also doing some work around the box or in front of the ramp, and then send them to the ramp. So every time they come and they learn how to relax at the box. So we work over here, and then we send them to the box. We relax by the box. Work over here, send them to the box. Making sure that you're on the right side of the box when you send them in is really important, because I see mostly people will walk their horse into the box next to them. excuse me, I want to be able to also send them in. So stand back maybe a couple of meters from the side of the ramp and just be able to send them into the box. It's often safer, especially if they in a truck where they've got to go in, turn, and come back out again. Is to step to the side of the ramp and let them go in and then bring them out again. And eventually get to stand and relax before they come out the box. And so it's just a slow but gradual process. One of the things I've noticed a lot actually recently with loading is when people pull their ramp down, it's often standing behind the ramp. I've actually seen someone get squashed. The partition came loose in a truck, and they came up to open the top. They didn't realize it was, and they pulled the box down. They were standing right in front of the ramp, and the horse came out and just squashed them and stood on the ramp and just flattened them to the ground. So I always say to be careful. There's a lot of safety elements around boxing. It depends on the type of box or the trailer that you're working with, but things like that to be really careful of. If your partition came loose, or sometimes we have a horse tied up and there's no partition there. On the last, especially in some of the horse trucks I see, is not to open your ramp. Don't stand in front of your ramp and open your ramp. It's to step to the side if you can. If it's heavy, then maybe two of you, just to step to either side of the ramp and bring the bank down, because I've actually seen someone get squashed to the ground and end up in intensive care, making those sorts of decisions. So be careful. Always be aware of what's going around you, where you park. Set yourself up so that you can work your horse around you. For example, when you leave a show, for example, there's having enough space around you to be able to work your horse and make sure that you're safe around the horse. Okay, I'm going to ask for some questions now because I think I've covered most things. Has anyone got any questions? No questions. I can't believe it. Especially on boxing. Okay, so where's that my little list of questions that people sent to me? Oh, here we go. So here we go. So yeah, there are some questions here that a couple of people sent through to me before. These aren't questions. Where are the questions? Here we go. How do I know if a horse has had a previous bad loading experience? Well, that's pretty simple. Often they won't go in the box. So if they've had a bad loading experience, it's a tough one because often you can't take that experience away from the horse. So they'll have that. When it comes up again, they'll often have that experience in their mind. So working through that kind of a situation where the horse has had bad loading experiences. Often I get situations where the horse has been loading and traveling fine, and then all of a sudden the horse stops loading. And I find that often is if you've had you may have had a bad trip, or you're braking, how you brake in your horse box, and how you manage the horse inside the horse box. If you had an accident, or you had to slam on the brakes or take off, or something happened, often that can set the horse up so that they feel uncomfortable going back into the box. So that experience. So from when I first started driving and transporting horses, my dad always said to me, if you imagine if you're driving your horse box or your trailer and you're sitting in the passenger seat with a bucket of water that was nearly full to the top, and see if you can drive without spilling that water. So using my gears to slow down, for example, not slamming on the brakes. One of the things I noticed the other day was a lot of beeping on the horn going around corners. So the lady was driving along with the horses, and the horses were getting stressed. But what she was doing is, because of the blind corners and probably stress and someone coming down the lane, was doing a lot of blowing on the horn every time she came around the corner. And I found that was upsetting the horses. So just being aware of little things like that. Obviously, they got to get used to that sort of thing. But it's just being aware of that sort of stuff and driving carefully so that you don't put a bad experience on your horse. So you might load and you drive and you had a bad experience, then come back and try and load him, and he'll say, no, I'm not loading on. So always take your time. Take as much time as you need to. More time. I always put more time aside if I'm going to a show or I'm competing. I'll put an extra hour aside because you never know on the day what's going to happen. But I'm always ahead of schedule. So a lot of people get to the horse and they got a small window of opportunity to get ready and get the horse on, and by that time they're already stressed. So that stress level, you can transfer that to the horse too. So making sure that you're really calm. When you come to load your horse, you've packed everything away, everything's set up, and you've prepared yourself and prepared the horse, and then put them on, because you may have to wait, especially if you're on it with a young horse or you're training your horse to load. I'd give myself at least an extra hour. So leaving a little earlier, obviously coming back, you haven't got that choice, but always keeping it calm, keeping it step-by-step process. So that's there's a question there. Okay, so what's the so next question was, how does groundwork help with loading? So we've really covered that. Most of you that know me know that if you want to talk about trailer loading or boxing your horse, first of all we talk about groundwork. So we go through a groundwork training program that covers all the aspects of loading in the groundwork program. So it all fits into little steps when we get to loading. The other thing that I've seen a lot of is sedation. Yeah. Is it safe to sedate your horse when loading? Well, I'd say definitely not. It's also with clipping. I see a lot of people clipping their horses. They can't clip their horse without sedation. So once again, comes back to preparation and slowly desensitizing the horse. But if you have to sedate your horse to get it into the box, then you really are going down the wrong road. So yeah, if you can I don't know, there's still people out there that do it, that sedate their horses to get them on a box, sedate their horses to clip them. The other day I was dealing with a lady who was sedating her horses to do the hooves. All these sorts of things that can be avoided end up costing a lot of money. For one particular lady who's trying to get the hooves sorted out, a lot of money every time the vet has to come in. And so yeah, I don't recommend sedation at all, but this is all about preparation really. Yeah, so yeah, not a fan of sedation, but if you're in a diabolical situation where you have to, then I guess so. But traveling a horse that's sedated is also it's dangerous, because they haven't got their senses all around them. They can fall over. So yeah, not a big fan of that. Okay, I think that's about it. We've got no more questions. Have you guys got any more questions? No questions? Someone must have a question. Okay, well, thank you for joining us. I hope that was informative and you got some information out of that. I'm just going to put Gemma on here. Just, hang on a sec. Gemma wanted to talk to me. Sorry, Gemma. Sorry, Gemma. I just put you on talking there. I didn't have you on talking. So if you've got no questions, I think we'll wrap it up there, guys.